We are beginning our second expert discussion, which is an extension of the discussion we had earlier, but it will be special in some respects, and you will feel it. And the discussion we are holding has been initiated by the High School of Corporate Management of our academy. Sergei Klodjan, its dean, will say a few words for a start. Good afternoon, dear friends, or rather good evening. May I first tell my students, who are numerous here, but our students are of different ages. We have the bachelor's program, the master's degree program, the MBA program, and Doctor of Business Administration graduates. We have people of all ages, but let me just tell those who are still aspiring to defend a thesis that when I was a student of the Lomonosov State University, and at the age of 25 years, Irina Nikolaevna was present on the board and voted for me together with the other council members, among Alexey Shatalin and Alexander Anchishkin. It's a great honor for our school to be having the Center of International Agro-Business, headed by Anatoliy Tikhonov, our alumnus, and Elmira Nikolaevna is an academician who is our scientific advisor. This final discussion in some respect is key to the end user, because when we all wake up, we take tea, coffee, some want a sandwich, and we're having people here that provide bread for us, so we all need to eat 3 times a day desirably. And in order to ensure that for not only those present, but also for the entire population of this nation, we need to work hard. So I wish you a good and resultative discussion, so that the people of our country might not have any problems with bread. Thank you. Now let us start our expert discussion or panel, and a few words will be said by my neighbor, Anatoliy. Good afternoon. Our meeting today, the microphone is working here. Our meeting here is held under the auspices of the International Agro-Business and Food Security Center, which is part of the High School of Corporate Management at our academy. I'm not sure how to handle this. Our center was created by Viktor Onishenko, an academic and diplomat, a wonderful teacher who passed away last year in January, but his cause continues to live through his disciples, and we hope that the center will carry on with his traditions, and we urge all our friends and all those who are indifferent and concerned about the food security of Russia to cooperate. Unfortunately, I cannot really make our equipment work, so let us honor the memory of Viktor Vladimirovich. by standing up. Please resume your seats. At this meeting, we are going to discuss some very serious issues. Earlier, we had a session on the strategic development of agriculture, guided by Anatoliy Gaidar, and the discussion was very interesting. They set the tone. The panelists set the tone to it, and what remains for us is to shift the accent a little in accordance with the session's title. And according to the rules, the first part of the meeting will be conducted by academician Yulia Krylatykh, and I hand over to you. The first thing we did when we were preparing this panel, we tried at first to urge you to answer the questions faced by the entire Gaidar conference. You will recall that it is entitled Russia and the World Development Priorities. So the development priorities issue is something we need to take a very rational approach, and then we need to look at what may prevent the implementation of those priority objectives. They are all kinds of risks and complications. Finally, opposing these problems and difficulties in order to implement the priority targets can be really attained through cooperation between the state and the business community. So what we're having on the screen as the center's mission, and then we'll later distribute questionnaires enabling us to work out a common stand on these three aspects: priorities, risks, and the public-private cooperation. Now, in the first place, what do we think are the priorities for the agro-industrial complex of Russia? Firstly, it's the development of a scientific conception of a national program and regional programs for the period until 2030. Second, the expansion and efficient use of the scientific and economic and environmental potential of the agro-industrial complex, and for all forms of the domestic agro-industrial sector, it is important to interact with international structures with equal access to resources. Fourthly, it's socioeconomic and environmental development of rural territories. Fifth is Russia's active involvement in international trade and commerce. Now, the next slide is dedicated to possible risks. There are 7 of them. You can read them from the screen, but still I will enumerate them. They have to do with climate and weather and nature. And secondly, it's various factors like the situation with the veterinary health, and so on. What we will distribute will include all this. You will be able to read these points. Finally, the development of all forms of the agro-business, including financial policy support, legal support, development of state programs and projects, and the development of fundamental and applied research, which has been mentioned repeatedly. We have also included efficient operation of Rosselkhoznadzor, the supervisory agency, as well as the development of sectoral national unions. So these are the highlights of our discussion to be held. Of course, we are not limiting its scope in any way, and we can now begin with a brief presentation, not more than 10 minutes. So please try to fit in with the time limit. Dear colleagues, good evening. I represent the Agricultural Economics Institute and would like to make a presentation on Russia's role and place in assuring the food security of the Eurasian Economic Union. Before making the main part of my presentation, let me go into history a little. Our institute was at the source of development of food security and sufficiency issues and the food security doctrine. We also took part in the formulation of doctrines adopted by the regional CIS associations, including Eurasian Economic Community and others. And then life runs fast, especially economics, and we move from one set of problems to others. Earlier we used to have hunger, now we are faced with obesity, but these are problems generated by the same source, and there are global issues as well. In the most recent past, it so happened that the world community at large came to be responsible for the feeding of people, although of course this does not take away the responsibility of each national government. And this has to do with Russia as well. Russia is a vast country with numerous issues, and assuring collective food security was not a task that emerged yesterday. It came into being some a decade ago or so, but when various regional associations emerged in the CIS space, it came to be realized that collective food security was a problem which was very acute, because many systemic problems did not only affect one nation, but also other members of such communities, especially the Eurasian Economic Union, which was formed 2 years ago, and it has its own internal and external problems. And the question is how, in a situation when the Union includes very different nations, how to assure a reliable supply of all kinds of food and physical accessibility of products, food products, and to make them items of goods of high quality. And our institute was asked to develop, along with other Institutions like Belarus, with which we worked most closely, proposals for this to this effect. The first difficulty we encountered is that the process of collective food security was impeded by the fact that there were different levels and speeds of socioeconomic development between countries, their different political systems, and different farming sector structures. There was a huge difference between per capita incomes as big as 7 times, whereas farming output was varying within a range of 100% in addition. And also, there was a lack of the proper legislative framework. There are indeed very many problems, and these two global problems were complicated by a third one, namely contradictions between national interests in various food segments and the peculiarities of every union member. And some really took a very consumer-like stand, considering the union as a market for their products without regard for the interests of Russian farm product makers, and it could really create obstacles to integration among the members. And among these 5 nations, which are very, very unequal, Russia is a natural center because it dominates them in terms of area, population size, GDP, and agricultural output, as well as share in the innovative potential and political weight. Suffice it to mention that Russia's share is 80% of the population, 84% of the GDP, and 76% of farm produce. And as you understand, in this situation, any radical change will affect Russia in the first place. So Russia is a leader and also an object of excessive pressure associated with the formation of the Union itself and the system of collective food security. Of course, there remains a very low level of harmonization among the rules and requirements, gaps in national legislations, and the insufficiently detailed legislative framework for international cooperation. In each nation, not every nation has all the standard-setting documents that would regulate the process of formulating a coordinated agricultural policy and affecting every country's agricultural policy at large, and would harmonize countries with various customs and conditions. But once there's an association and a union, we have tried to come up with a document that would be in compliance with every nation's standards without infringing on their national interests, so that they would both meet the requirements of the Union and I have only 2 minutes left.
In a certain specified directions, we made the analysis of the collective food security program on the basis of the national doctrines available on the CIS space, and we came to the conclusion that the food security is the primary document which describes the mission, the directions, the tools, and the parameters which should be adhered to. Of course, these are serious complexities for general and overall unification, for the norms in Belarus are different, in Russia also different, in Armenia they have their own, and when we study this material to the letter, so actually we find that there is no basic platform or tool so that we could adhere to that. And it also becomes more complex that there is no unified methodology of food security for each individual country. And we analyzed our doctrine for 2 years, and we sent it over to the government with all our remarks and amendments. But still, 2 years passed, and it has not been presented to the public. And you might have come across that there are some methodologies for assessment of food security. We know how to calculate it, but there are some specific approaches which need to be further studied. And having done that, and having prepared this collective document, it's very difficult to make it work. And we need to make a comprehensive document for the assessment of each individual country assessment and present a draft. Thank you. As far as questions are concerned, we will give you the time for further comments. And Mr. Alexeenko, Rosselkhoznadzor, this is the supervisory agency. As we have very limited time frame, I will try to brief you on the problems and challenges which we are facing. First of all, we have to start with the goals to establish a sustainable agro-industrial complex, and we have to talk about this complex in its full scope, the infrastructure and the industry. A lot has been done in recent years after the collapse of the 90s and the beginning of the attempts to revitalize the agrarian complex. And what do we have today is our assert. We have become the largest suppliers of grain and cereals to the global market. We started to supply poultry and beef, but Turkey, for instance, they also produce cereals, but became the largest producer of flour from our Russian grain. And they have lots of spaghetti and macaronis, making it out of our raw materials. And one of the problems is the model of our agrarian industry. It's a raw material model, we supply raw products to the global markets. And the second problem is the genetic dependence. So, because we faced the collapse in the 90s, the production of seeds and artificial fertilization, and that was a tremendous damage to the pedigree cattle stock. And now we are in the stage when Miratorg is bringing young cows or we buy the incubators eggs, we grow it and sell poultry or turkey meat, and unfortunately that's the reality. And the fact that we have attained food security and independence is still is not the reality and is not the fact. We had a serious problem with fish. We imported lots of fish from Norway. It was very convenient for industrial processing, but not good for our manufacturers, especially for those who've been involved in the processing. And now the raw dependence in fish has been replaced. We closed the supplies from Norway. Wasn't easy, and Norwegians thought that we were not able to do that, but we made it, and we started to develop our own fishery. And now we are dependent on a different types of raw materials, while the productive headcount of animals fell down. We import more and more produce from Belarus. And this problem is also a dependence, and we need to solve this problem. There are other problems. This is uneven development of territories, be that also agrarian and domination of large businesses. Of course, it managed and helped to resolve most important issue of feeding the population. But there is also a problem, the social minus. This is unemployment of vast masses of rural population, and the development of agro-industrial complex should be escorted with a sustainable sales operations. And now we are in the negotiations with our colleagues so that they should open their markets for the supplies of our products, and we try to provide incentives for export operations. Sometimes we feel the shortage of state funds to support the agrarian business, but that could be a substantial source of financial support. And we have to do whatever possible to stimulate the demand for food products. That's how we could ensure the sustainable development. And I would like to talk also about the responsibility of the state. And the state should ensure security in the most various sectors. That is the security of the consumer, security of the agricultural businesses, problems relevant to the veterinary issues, and lots of funds are required there because the damage may be very serious, like the we spent more than 30 billion rubles for the pork plague. And now the European businesses are suffering from the chicken flu and lots of diseases coming from Korea and Asia, and 25 million the heads of birds were killed, and the prices went up immediately 25%. And the basic task of the state is to ensure safety and security, and economic security as well. And we have one more problem which also inflicts damage to our economy, and that is the mass falsification of food products. As per our selective checks, about 25% of food products are forged. In China, they also forge even chicken eggs. Sometimes they inject phosphate components into fish products, and at the same time that causes the problem that these companies, they achieve advantage, illegal advantage over the faithful business. And those companies which produce normal and quality products, they find themselves in a very unfavorable position. And of course, the state should think about the development both of those who are producing and processing food products. And in order to bring that kind of order in control and supervision, we need to change the system. Now we have a multi-stage and very inefficient system. And we have too many controlling bodies, and we need to discontinue this practice and create a new federal service which would ensure the ability to trace the origin of products from the beginning to the shelf on the supermarket. We also have to change the attitude towards risk assessment. We do have such a center of risk assessment, and again here we managed to find out many more important things. Implementation of digitalized system, it should be personified, and if we are the winners in this struggle, and we will discontinue this direct contact between the bureaucrat and the consumer, we will definitely battle and fight the corruption. It is necessary also to change the system of control of agrarian sector in other advanced countries. They have a Ministry of Agricultural production. We need to have the coordination sector, and the reform of 2004 turned out to be ineffective. And I saw a colleague from New Zealand. They have very good and effective system of control and supervision, and they pioneered in this area. And when the state inspector is coming to their farm, it's free of charge audit. They have a corporation which conducts the whole process in this industry, and they have the public-private partnership in this respect. And I also would like to talk about the necessity of certification, transparent and rigid, of all food products produced, because sometimes I have certificates where we have dozens of items for perhaps 5 years ahead, when this product has not been produced at all. So we need to also develop the legal framework for that as well, because we would not be able to settle that without a comprehensive approach. But joined together, we could succeed. Now we come over to the United States. Is that the case, please? Where do we have someone who will assist us in translation? Mr. Ovchinnikov, Oleg Grigorievich, he is the head of the Agrarian Center of United States and Canada, and he is well-known specialist in this area. Esteemed Chair, participants and guests, I'd like to touch upon the topic which is very difficult to comprehend in the framework of one presentation. And agrarian branch is the most complicated branch as compared with other branches, and it never feels that much of attention on behalf of the state and regulating bodies. And the first thing I'd like to point out, the whole economic policy in the United States finally is directed to ensure the food security of the country. Here is the structure of goals and missions to ensure internal demands of foodstuffs, ensure qualitative and quantitative balance. And the second slide, we have the first goal, the agrarian policy, to ensure stability of industrial complex and to minimize the consequences of industrial activity. On the slide, you can see the structure of goals, 1, 1, 1. And now let's see how in the practice of agrarian sector we achieve these goals. Shaping of infrastructure which ensures high effectiveness and stability of agrarian production. And this mission has been accomplished, and this is the basic role of the state. And 3 basic systems were created: irrigation system, then roads from farmer to the market, and electrification of rural areas. Without these 3 infrastructural projects, today's organization of agricultural industry wouldn't be possible. What do we have here in Russian? Here is the information on basic characteristics of infrastructural sites, and you see the engineering aspects of roads, then how melioration is done, and statistics is very tough here. And in Russia, the government isn't paying substantial attention to that. Many infrastructural sites are coming to us from the past, and they are found in a very shabby state. And since 2010, the melioration, about 500 billion rubles were invested, but this is too little to solve the problem. So we can't say about the efficient development of agrarian sector under these conditions. The next is to create the prerequisites for comprehensive development in future. What tools of economic policy are used? And here is the budget financing plus incentives from private business. And here you can see the basic numbers in terms of science financing, which received $16.3 billion, and a lot of money was invested into the capacity building and upgrading of personnel. What do we have in Russia? The condition with the agrarian sides is really very, very rotten, and we don't have any mechanism for knowledge transition, and we spent only 9 billion rubles spent from the budget, and this is really a very limited amount. In China, $9 million, United States, $4 million. And the scope of financing of science in the United States is 50 times more than that in Russia. And the conclusion is the following: you can't have future for agrarian sector in Russia under such financial efforts. So to ensure stability of food security, we need to ensure the capability to resist to the outside factors and fluctuation in production. And we need to solve multiple tasks, and they are most important. Agrarian sector demands a lot of funds, and that is why we need a sustainable, predictable development.
And in order to do that, a safety net has been set up, which is a complex of various efforts that enables an average farm to remain afloat even in unfavorable conditions, and to develop stably in favorable conditions. Let me enumerate the basic principles and instruments of agricultural policy used to that end. To assure the economic sustainability of agriculture, a number of instruments are used: direct financing and subsidizing, guarantees of credit and loans, effective program of commodity secured loans, assuring the minimum number of level of prices, a wide range of tax benefits. For example, farmers are relieved from fuel tax, mostly solar oil, which may contribute to 30% of the product prices, and they thus economize some $5 billion annually. There's there are combined steps for supporting ethanol use and production, and bioethanol with prescribed quotas for its content in gasoline, which has led to a sharp increase in its production from which increased ninefold. Well, I could actually stop here. Oh, let's give you 5 more minutes. As a result, the demand for corn, for maize, has increased. Its prices grew threefold and were followed by the growth of prices on other plants. As a result, direct assistance and payments were reduced by half, along with many thousands of new jobs created. Well, in the production of staple crops, direct subsidizing and indirect support are substantial, but for vegetables, the tools used are totally different, whereas meat production is not really enjoying any government support, whereas dairy cattle raising is indeed under close care. All government programs are fully transparent, with all players enjoying equal conditions, and hundreds of agriculture department offices have been set up all over the country. They are called service centers. And now let's look at how things stand in Russia in this area. The main characteristics of the Russian state regulation system in assuring the stability of the agrarian sector is its meagerness and intransparency. There are very few tools used, and the scope of financing is very minimal, and poor transparency leads to inefficient use of funds. And let us briefly stay on the issue of environmental balance. Although Russian agrarians are not yet facing this issue, I'll confine myself to the situation in the U.S. This is the overall nature conservation and protection programs in agriculture. There are 15 government-financed programs, and under the most recent 2014 law, the financing of nature conservation programs should enjoy an allocation of some $58 billion, or an average of $6 billion annually. Now, the second set of targets that assure food security, that's the assurance of quality in a balanced ration of consumption. First is controlled quality of food. There's a multi-level system of such control quality supervision. The second task of the group is assuring access to the minimum food basket for all groups of the population, and this is both federally and state financed. These are statistics of food support programs, which were worth some $103 billion. It is even difficult to estimate the total number of people that enjoyed support under these programs, but by various estimates, it amounted to a quarter of the U.S. population, and food coupons were received by 45 million people, and assurance of quality is a major task of food security. These are statistics of those programs starting from the 1960s to the present. So this is how they evolved. There are how the four basic programs evolved. Now, this is the number of the food coupon programs. The number of recipients varied because the programs were flexible, because in times of economic crisis, the number of recipients increased, whereas when the economy was on the rise, it shrank. And the most recent change in the number of recipients took place in order to compensate for the consequences of the economic crisis. In 2013, the Russian Ministry of Agriculture began developing pilot food support programs, and despite the availability of U.S. experiences and expert recommendations, the ministry decided to learn not from others, but from its own mistakes. And one of the most serious principles, federal centralization, is something that has shown to be effective in the United States. All Russian projects have been delegated to the regions, and no good will come out of it. And the expert community is not really asked to assess progress results. If you can give me 5 more minutes, there's another unique area. If you can give me that time, shall we? Okay, you have it. It's really a very unusual thing, which is unheard of in Russia, but it will be of interest. The last point in food security objectives is the assurance of principles, assertion of principles of rational and healthy eating, and that might be might seem as something too far-fetched, but this is wrong. The ultimate goal is not just to produce more food or enough food for the population, but to make the population healthy, which is not the same thing. And a very high level of food availability and accessibility for the population has been achieved in the United States, and food spending is below 10% on the average in the budget of the average American. These are figures on the health condition of adult Americans. Growth of chronic diseases and obesity in the past 30 to 40 years has led to very serious consequences, and this is part of the price that the American community pays for the accessibility of food. A large number of food issues are the effects of unhealthy eating, and data has been published on that. On food, unhealthy eating recommendations have been published starting from 1965, and the effect is very considerable. Look at these graphs, please. You can see the evolution of the consumption index for certain food items. The changes in the structure of consumption were most serious after an active campaign in favor of healthy eating started in the 1980s, and changes in the consumption of cheese, poultry, and butter and grains was growing at an accelerated rate, whereas the consumption of eggs and milk went down. In Russia, there's nothing of the kind. They believe everything is okay with people's health and food eating patterns. So, as a result, the United States has built a streamlined and efficient system of economic policy to keep up food security. In Russia, no food security objective has been attained in Russia. We are being told that we have reached almost 100% self-sufficiency in most food items, but it is difficult to believe that those statistics. When you think of Russian statistics, you recall Disraeli's statement. There are 3 types of lies, lies as such, blatant lies, and statistics. Now, for example, estimates of food production by households is something taken from the ceiling or off one's little finger, and more than half of farms cannot support production growth, and many current achievements in Russian agriculture are based on the anti-sanction regime. So all agrarians come out in favor of keeping retaining those anti-sanctions. So do we want to remain hostile to the rest of the world? So if you believe everything is good, let me ask you, why did the agrarian sector of the United States made an impressive progress starting from the 1990s, and we continue stalling. Why does Russian agriculture develop in a very lopsided way? Why do people continue to die out? Where is cooperation, cooperative efforts? Why former farmland remains grown over with weeds? Where are programs of food support for the less privileged? Why are inefficient and poorly thought out programs, laws are still being adopted? And the answer is just one. The current government has no coherent economic policy in the agro-industrial sector. So it is an urgent task to fully reform the government's agrarian policy. I think that's a tone-setting presentation, but may I just reply in a couple of words? It was an excellent presentation showing very clearly the need for fighting economic mythology. In the 1990s, we fell victim to one myth. The market will put everything in place. A market is something that you need to take good care of. Okay, thank you, but let's move on. The next speaker will be a representative of Bashkortostan. Thank you, dear colleagues. I'm Ilshat Romanov. I represent the Republic of Bashkortostan. Oleg, have you visited Bashkortostan? Yes. When did you visit it? It was a long time ago. I suggest, I invite you to visit Bashkortostan. I invite everybody to do so. Generally, I have been at the head of our Republic's Agriculture Ministry, and earlier I had worked in one of the biggest agricultural enterprises, so I am very down to earth, and our agro-industrial complex in our republic is rather well balanced. Out of our 4 million population, 40% live in rural areas, and we have both big farms and medium-sized farms and small farms and household farming plots. And there are 5 climatic zones. The Urals area, the Trans-Urals area, the more humid northern part, and a zone more close to the central European Russian climate. Now, what we want to achieve by 2020 is to make an emphasis on the development of companies with an area of farmland of at least 50,000 hectares, with distribution channels and independent trading systems. Also, strong farmers living in villages with their families and children and neighbors working on land, and they are going to be the supporters of our villages. And the third area is, or the third objective is making people's lives comfortable in the villages. Well, we have created highly paying jobs. When people come from work, They have a park to visit. They have water supply and water process and drainage, schools with children's clubs and facilities, and they enjoy better conditions than in urban areas. And this is not too difficult to create. We are holding these days an all-Russian conference on the development of rural territories. So there's life going on in the country. Now about food security. We keep saying food security, food security. When I was a student or a postgraduate, we were always told that this or that should be done for the sake of food security. You say everything's good in America and bad here, but when I wrote my thesis, we used to consume over 6 million tons of sugar, and the share of domestic sugar was only a quarter. The rest came from Brazil and other countries. Last year, Russia consumed 4.5 million tons of sugar, but we consumed
600,000 tons to put pressure on our market, and our agrarians sold sugar 47,000. Now it's 33. Of course, this is a pressure, and the highest price is July and August. We will remain in the margin of 33 rubles, and the way out is just to export. We need to have a cheap, inexpensive ruble, and that's the way out. But the infrastructure remains the same, and sugar plants remain the same, and we extract more sugar beans. And if we have a drought for 2 years, we will lose all our crop. So it's good that we are talking about this problem, and it is worthless to accuse the government just like that. We are looking for the way out, for the solution. And I would invite you to Bashkiria. Let's sit down and think over our strategy. And we are discussing that on a regular basis, once in a month. And small farmers, I always supported them. Income, expenses, what we grow, what is the cost price. They increase the profit, reduce the expenses, and I'm questioning the farmer. And who will be the inheritor of all the wealth that you have created? Do you have kids? Yes, I have a son working in Ofar. Why don't you bring your son? But he is working in the city, making 35,000 rubles, but you are making a profit. And I convinced him to bring the guy back to the farm, and he has been working during the year of 2016, and his son now inherited the farm and continues to work on land. Yes, Russia always depended on the regions because Russia is a very vast country, and the regions, they gain very valuable experience, and that experience should be thoroughly analyzed, and Bashkiria demonstrates excellent results in terms of agriculture. And thank you very much, Richard, for his brilliant presentation. But at the same time, the problem has been identified and pointed out, and the problem remains that the production, we don't have the sustainability, and great volatility depending on the climatic conditions, but still we need the government and power to create conditions, or at least to foresee what's going to happen in future. We do have intervention tools or creation of reserves, but there is an excellent option how to conduct yourselves in the conditions of the World Trade Organization, how to protect the market and support the producers. Esteemed colleagues, despite of the fact that we do have many drawbacks in agriculture, and 2 years ago we started the work on the doctrine on food security, and we do have successes in poultry industry, in beetroot growing, and those branches who give momentum for the development of others if the state invests its money from the budget. And of course we understand what's happening in the United States, and when we create the doctrine, yes, we know about the standards, we know about the investments, and we also know what's happening between the regions, but at the same time we find many positive aspects in our life. And 15 years ago we spent about 48%. Even last year, when our buying capacity dropped, but we have a survey on these households, and there are certain difficulties. We could assess them on a global level in terms of global security, food security. Of course, this is we cannot even assess our capabilities under different reasons. They are most various. Rosstat, Ministry of Agriculture and Science, and we need to find the compromise or consensus, and the same problem does exist when elaborating the principle of collective food security, but we'll learn to settle these issues and problems. And of course, it's not the problem of statistics. We have very complicated economic and social policy. Life is the best teacher. Yes, thank you. Excuse me, the speaker doesn't have a microphone. Here we have to talk about reason and common sense in choosing the policy. Yes, we are looking for a reasonable policy in agriculture. Well, what I was talking about, we don't have a national agrarian policy. Mr. Romanov, he's the colleague of Richard. He was the Minister of Agriculture in Kaliningrad area. It's an enclave very close to Europe. We would like to hear his viewpoint in this respect. Good afternoon, esteemed colleagues, and I would like to thank the organizers for today's event, for a very comprehensive discussion, and would like to broaden it up and include into the first part, which discussed the strategy of agricultural development. We'll talk about company group, Zaleska Milk. It's the agricultural produce, 12,000 hectares in turnover, 6,000 cows and pedigree cow stock. We sell the products both in Kaliningrad Oblast, and since 2016 we approached the markets of St. Petersburg and Moscow Zalesky Farmer brand. Of course, we are thinking about strategy in our enterprise, and it couldn't be correlated with a strategy which should be in the country as a whole. I would disagree with a certain pessimistic assessment that there is no future for this branch of economy. We feel that we are developing with very high rhythm. If you take the basis as for 1990, and on most numbers in cattle breeding have not been received, but in plant growing we've demonstrated impressive results. And when we executed priority national projects, here we see the dynamics very impressive in most directions. If you take our company group in 1990, Kaliningrad Oblast sold to other regions 30,000 heads of pedigree cattle. And after the 90s, that number dropped to almost zero. And then we again started to do the same. And we started to send cows to our colleagues, more than 200 cows. And we are very proud of what we did, for it corresponds to all parameters in quality and price, and we understand that we could be competitive on the market. The question arises, what kind of strategy of agricultural development should we choose? Primarily, we have to respond to two simple questions. What exactly do we want to get? Do we want to feed our nation? Or do we consider that Russia as a strong player on the global market, and we have to choose certain directions? Not exactly the whole agricultural, but certain directions which could be competitive on the global market. Let's single them out. We need to work with that, with those branches, to concentrate our efforts there, and we could sell these products on the global market. Export of products. Is it possible to do that? We are the largest exporters of grain, but we understand that nobody is waiting for us on these markets. It's a very difficult work, and what we export are products with very low added value. This is raw materials like grains or cereals. I would attribute that to raw materials and produce with deeper processing. They do not allow to be sold there by administrative barriers. Yes, this is competitive for all markets, for the United States, Europe, and China, but as a rule, we are not welcome there just because of the administrative barriers. And the most descriptive example is Iran. They evaded from the status of economic sanctions, but even it is impossible to approach the market of this country. Difficult, yes, they allow something, but they stimulate the production of their own products on their own territories, and this is just the basic approach of all countries. But for certain African countries where their buying capacity is very low, we have to use all our political and administrative resources, and we have to thank Rosselkhoznadzor, who is the real ally of ours, who supports and promotes our interests at all export markets. But in order to be competitive, even after the time when the sanctions would be withdrawn, we need to understand that we have to be very competitive with minimum costs on the unit of products, but we have to possess most advanced technologies, not limiting ourselves what was manufactured or grown here. We are talking about technology, equipment, technique or know-how, genetics and other things, and I share all risks and threats in terms of selections and genetics. We depend on the outside world, but after a certain period of time, to get 60% of seeds of our own, but they would be more costly and in quality will be lesser. So all these tools could be very skillfully used and very neatly applied. And this is the problem not only of Russian Federation vitamins for animals, and as for today, there is no even the European manufacturing capacities, and this market is held by China. And South America and Europe, they are not very much concerned. Where is our national program to create our vitamins? They understand that this production could be organized, who is going to finance it, and what kind of product we'll get finally. Now, selection. The end of 2016 is now working under the selection motto. What is it? It's the company which is involved in agriculture is number 3 in the world in terms of the volume of earnings in this world, but this is 5.4 billion rubles, dollars. It is comparable with our annual budget of the whole agriculture of Russia. Are we prepared to double or triple our budget to resolve these issues so that we could produce the competitive product in selection branch? And this is not just a program which could be accomplished in a year or two so that we could create a global leader in the sphere of genetics or selection or some other most advanced directions. Now, coming back to the strategy, supporting the statements of my colleagues, only specialization of the regions. In today's program, everybody should produce everything, which is not good. It's bad to produce milk when the temperature is -40, and this specialization should be thoroughly written down so that we could come back and analyze it respectively, but every region should have the capability of technological control of what they are doing. And in every subject of Russian Federation, there are 4 federal structures which are subordinate to the Ministry of Agricultural Ministry of Russia. This is Agrochemical Service, which is involved with the fertility of land. They're testing the seeds, and Rosselkhoznadzor. 4 structures are present there, and at the same time we understand that we don't have the best in-class technology. And finally, the technology and skillful personnel. On the previous event, my colleague said we need to create special conditions for agrarian institutions to those schoolboys and schoolgirls who are coming from the village. If we want to develop the competitive production, so I don't need the guys who are not even capable to pass the school exams. And today the technologies are such that they require very high skills. And in 10 years, our company, thanks to the point blank soil cultivation, we reduced the amount of petrol and gas used for the processing twice. And by the use of modern technologies, we reduce the amount of fertilizers per hectare of land, and we replenish those from the soil which escape while growing the crop. And this system makes it possible to define the new technologies for fertilizing processes of cattle, and in the average we could reduce this period by 10 days. It means additionally 10 days of milk which we produce. Yes, we know the success. Yes, I'm talking about technology. Just give me 1 minute more. So capacity building. Here, business doesn't have to wait that someone is going to solve this problem. We are in close contact with all institutions of Kaliningrad Oblast. We have an agreement, and we have jobs for the students, those who would come to work as probation period, and those who prove to be really interested and worth. They receive a loan for 10 years. We give them living quarters, and they could continue their work.
Our employees' average age has changed from 55 plus to 40 plus over 10 years. And we have higher than average figure for wages, monthly wages, than on the average than elsewhere in Kaliningrad Oblast, over 45,000 rubles, and we have some managers that earn 100 or 150. I have this question. You used to have problems in Kaliningrad Oblast associated with dairy farming. If something terrible happens and the sanctions are lifted, now tell me, how will your region react to that? Will you be prepared? Today, Igor Shuvalov, as he spoke at the plenary meeting, in fact, said that the sanctions would last until the end of December 2017, and no one was promising to extend them. But a colleague from Gazprombank was sitting next to me, and we began to discuss new projects in dairy farming and dairy industry, and were ready to move on. I will emphasize again that if we are capable of adopting modern technologies and attracting highly skilled or managers, or of training them with an average European level of productivity, why should we be afraid? So you're optimistic. Yes, I am, because our 15-year long experience at our company has taught us to not to milk cows just like that, but to raise people who are ready to work in a competitive space. So your competitiveness is assured by your team. That's right. Thank you. And now let me hand over to Nadezhda Pakhomova. Dear colleagues, thank you for inviting me here. to take part in your very interesting workshop. I have arrived from St. Petersburg. I am an economist, an environmentalist, and a mathematician by education. So my view of the agro-industrial complex is from this perspective. The environmental component of agriculture has been already tackled, and the need was stressed to retain productivity without undermining environmental well-being. I represent St. Petersburg University, a laboratory of efficient economy and environment. The financing of research is also achieved or conducted through mega projects, so-called mega projects, and we are the second team that won the right to receive such a grant in a very tough competition, and we have the world's leading experts, a leading expert, Frederick van der Plyk, and I am his deputy, and we have both adult and very young researchers, and Frederick and I, we want those young associates to attain the level of Quartile 1 and to rate of publications in scientific journals. Now, on December 27th, a state council meeting was held dedicated to environmental issues. The person that raised the issues relating to agriculture was Sergei Mironov, though the council was concentrating on other issues, and as the year 2017 is the year of the environment, I was a little surprised that it was really in a very low profile, because when you visit international conferences abroad, sustainable development and low carbon growth are topics that are constantly discussed, and we keep trying to alert our leaders to these issues. In fact, I did not have enough time to prepare for this discussion, and I would like to carry on with a few questions raised in the context of the export potential. My general subject is transition to a sustainable agriculture model by Russia. And indeed, Russia has a huge potential. It has been discussed how to make our agriculture sustainable so that after sanctions are lifted, we do not lose our positions in our own country. But as regards organic farming, it's a segment which, I go abroad very often, and as regards the perception of Russia as a country that can supply organic food, no one has yet been able to shake this down, and we do not even need to create a new perception. No need to promote any special brand, and we have a huge potential here. And let me call your attention to the fact that agriculture plays a great role in climate change issues. It does not discharge any hydrocarbons, but there are discharges of methane that is stronger than CO2 in terms of affecting climate, and foreign experts point this out. And animal husbandry is the key sector. Livestock breeding is the key source of that. 10 to 12% is the global average threshold of the dangerous threshold. Our rate is below 7, so it's not the most risky factor, but agriculture is most vulnerable to global climate change. An increase of temperature of 1 degree may lead to a decrease, a 17% decrease in productivity. And although people keep saying that the warming will be in our favor, well, there are certain doubts here. Golikova has said that they had expected that they had estimated 58 million hectares as withdrawn from agricultural production. And experts believe that if land has not been used for at least 1 year, it's enough to go over to organic farming. By our standards, it takes 2 or 3 years, but still, I have a few more points. We are now being asked the area that is occupied by organic farming in Russia is 0.1%, but it assures some 12 to 15% growth. It's a very stable element with stable demand. Who assures this organic demand for organic farm produce? It's 45% of those who take care of their children. So it's about food nutrition. I mean, children's food, baby food. That's what marketing experts believe. Then people who want to live a healthy lifestyle, and 10% are people who have to stick to a diet on medical prescription, and 5% do this because it's fashionable. So these are the groups to go by. Also, as regards markets, alongside the fact that we have a favorable image, and, well, this is something very expensive, but it has been given to us for free. It's a freebie, and no one has tried to damage this or has been able to damage this image. Apart from this, I support this idea of a differentiated strategy. We have we cannot do things the way Khrushchev did with maize and just tell everybody to start organic farming. But we have made undertook studies of opportunities, areas with opportunities for organic farming, and in a number of regions. And despite the fact that there's no idle land in some areas, organic farming is still developing, and we found that the figure of 58 million hectares has been mentioned, and there are various estimates, but there's also the law on the requisitioning of land if used inefficiently, and so our supervisory bodies are not active enough, and this land could be used for organic farming. A second factor is the share of unemployed. If you put these two factors together, in a number of regions, we saw opportunities. We have published a recent article which lists those regions where organic farming might be a good idea. There are also different types of land, farmland, and there should be a diverse palette of agricultural forms that could be associated with organic farming. They could involve big agro-industrial holding companies and on the other hand, it could include individual farms or recreational farming enterprises combining tourism and recreation with agricultural enterprises. So there's a huge potential here, and in fact, such facts will not find the lifting of sanctions dangerous, and academician Porfiriev is writing also, and it's on this subject. I don't think it's a secret for anybody that the environmental conditions of China are terrifying. Their underground waters have been contaminated by 70%, and the soils are contaminated there. So they have a really very high demand for normal, environmentally clean food, not even answering the highest standards. But there's a big problem with the government. They have not been passing a law on organic standards, farming standards, for 15 years. So the standards remain voluntary. I was very interested in listening to your presentation on the U.S. system, but for me, the farming of China is about genetically modified organisms, and it also includes obesity and diabetes. I am not sure that they consume healthy food, because everybody notices that in the United States, over half of the population are obese. As regards farming, it's 10 biggest companies that are trying to monopolize the entire world. And I don't know in what way they receive their super profits. Thank you for your very interesting presentation, and we are now. But may I make an addition, as you have touched on the environment. Unfortunately, global warming has affected us in the form of the January tragedy last time, when permafrost melted down, and anthrax and animals killed by anthrax, animal bodies killed by anthrax came to the surface. And and as regards the southern regions, no one knows how the Black Sea will behave with its huge resources of hydrogen, sulfur. As regards environmental standards, we still have no standards, but it may be for the better, because the products that are branded as organic are not such. We have found tremendous amounts of antibiotics in what was passed for farmers' milk. And we cannot just set legislative parameters for what such products should correspond to. A system of tough certification is needed. which should be verifiable. And I think that at our groceries, all the products should be divided into three categories. One, premium organic products. The second, the largest one, natural products, also with everything quite transparent. And the third, smallest group are various replacement products or products, items containing artificial components. If we have such a division, we would be in the we would be better off buying food at supermarkets. So, well, if you are hesitant, if you don't know what to buy in a shop, what can we say about ourselves? But here we're having bread manufacturers, representatives of business, and let's ask him what they can tell us about the subjects we're discussing. Dear colleagues, I thank you for your courage and stamina and patience.
What kind of contribution is this 30 or 40%?
We have a wonderful day. I spent 6 hours from 6 to 12 at the bakery because baking bread is a nighttime occupation. My initial impression was that economics was science studying competitive forms, but then after some discussion, I came to the conclusion it's a fundamental science. So let me suggest a few basic concepts that would probably enable us to speak the same language. Now, a free market economy is what we have been in since the 1990s. We know that freedom is a necessity that we are aware of, and what freedom includes is just about anything. According to the official statements of representatives of the grain market, 40% of the grain market are in the shadow. And isn't that impressive? In our industry, there are nice, big, beautiful firms that bake bread while their main line of activity is construction, and their loaf of bread is priced at 11 rubles, although the average prime cost is 25, and that is called dumping. And this is the kind of freedom that we are enjoying in this market economy. What are we to do with this freedom? It's been protracted indeed, and over time, all honestly working teams and firms would like to work in a normal way and in normal conditions. So what they need are regulations, is regulation. Some people recalled Gosplan Chief Baibakov so that he might help us put things in order with regulation, because economic freedom is a lot worse than shortage. Now, who is the or what are the regulators of this process? There are fiscal authorities that regulate them, but if you balance fiscal and motivational issues and incentives, we will realize that the share of incentives is very low. and I'm saying this for the sake of macroeconomists and the makers of our laws, for the State Duma and the Council of the Federation, as well as the government, down at for the authorities at all levels. What are the motivational factors? Tax experts keep telling us that if you work well, we will give you tax benefits, but the share of such tax benefits is very small, and it's best if they are. And so tax incentives have never led to the desired result, and have led to the reverse of the goal. This is our grain chain. Down below you have grain producers. It's very unstable. On top is the retail sector. Under them are bakers, and the retail profits are equal to all our earnings. We cannot just ask them to give us back a share of their profits, because our profit rate is zero. We have lost 1,000 bakeries, and it takes 3 billion rubles to build a new bakery, and bakeries are there, they are working, they operate, and it's very difficult at very big mega markets, because like Moscow's, the city of Moscow, because everybody's coming here. There's a vibrant market, and regulation of these processes and the grain chain. Let me say it right away that we all appeal to the state, to the government, to the budget authorities, but with this disproportion, by repairing this disproportion with incentives, where self-regulation has remained, it is even difficult to say where. We have something among flour makers and in primary grain producers. They can come to terms. And the nice thing about these indices is that they are counted in terms of both quantity and quality, and they could agree among themselves on a price corridor. We will thus restore a chain with a stable bottom, because otherwise it will all collapse.
Further on. Yeah, the same. Yeah, I'm talking from the standpoint of macro economic approach, and basic 5 products: bread, milk, meat, and fruit. So that everybody is involved here. We have integrals of normative numbers, and if we talk about our diet specialists, so they do have these numbers age-wise, and 142 million people of our population, they could be very easily accounted for in terms of every specific food product that you will get the market in any scale from the whole of Russia towards the regions. Allow me to formulate the term of food security. This is the real production and sales of basic products satisfying normative requirements of the population of the country. So the average check on retail dropped 15–20%. And this is the profits or earnings of the population, and the drop in their earnings. And if you need the balance of interest, so the balance here is infringed, and it's not easy to compensate for that, to increase the activity of the whole of the population, and that could be done at all levels. not exactly touching upon the national budget. Bashkiria is a bright example, excellent working, and there are some regions which are very comfortable in terms of industrial production. There are jobs and normal life goes on. And I talked about the interaction of free market economy and regulations. There is a comprehensive mechanism. If you want to regulate something and you want to attain a stable system, you have to use the different management system. It is taken from physics and philosophy, and you could introduce 4 or 5 notions, and everybody should speak the same simple language. Now, tell us, please, for your business, for your branch, what is of greatest concern in terms of food security? Your branch, is it capable to ensure that food security and make its own input? Do you have any critical things which could be really pointed out? We lost more than 1,000 enterprises, and the remaining plants, well, the structure of nutrition changed. And this is approximately, could be compared with the year of 2000s in Europe. People, they don't know what to eat, starting with the show business, and excellent discussion platform for that. And the experts also have to say a word of their own, and the meat industry also talks about this. But unfortunately, there is a lot of falsified facts concerning nutrition, and we stand on a classical technology when we lose a lot because it consumes more effort, and we've been working with zero profitability, and of course this branch has to be rescued, no doubt. And the last slide, things which are very little being discussed. So this is the quality and quantity. Everybody should take part in that, both small and medium-sized business, because of the investment policy and the basic investments, they go to big business. That's good. You get big chunk of taxes, but if you regulate this structurally, both small scale and medium-sized business also will make its input into the food security from the viewpoint of quantity and quality. Thank you. Thank you for a very comprehensive presentation. We would like also to hear Mr. Chinarov, Vladimir Ivanovich. I would like to give the floor. He is in charge of the laboratory working on aggregation of agriculture. I'm sure he has a lot of things to say, and he's very close to actual business, and issues of food security are really very urgent for him. First of all, I represent the Russian Institute of Cattle Breeding, and we came here with Mr. Strykozov. He's the head experts in dairy cattle breeding, and not only because of that, but because the milk dairy, it's the most problematic branch of agriculture, and a lot has been spoken about problems, and we, representing the branch, everybody is waiting for professional advice. And I could single out 5 theses and elaborate on them and give grounds for everyone of that thesis. And everybody understands we still have a shortage of beef, of indigenous production, and this is still an area where we depend on imports, and the outcome, as it always was, the development of specialized meat, cattle breeding. However, when we extrapolate that on the reality, it became a competitor to the milk cows, and the head count of cows is shrinking 100 or 120,000 a year, but here at the same time the head count of milk cows, and we are losing 300,000 cows every year. It means 3%. And 5 or 6 years, and the country will lose milk cows, and we will remain without milk and cows. What needs to be done in this situation? First of all, why they transfer the cows from milk to cow? Because not all the farms are competitive, and in meat cattle breeding there is a subsidy, and that's how they get subsidies. It's a small amount of money, but this is better than nothing. And I am not claiming that we need to take this money from those who are involved in meat cattle breeding, but we have to have a balance for milk cows subsidies, so that they shouldn't compete between each other, and economically they wouldn't force me to make such a transfer. Second, in order to handle this problem, this discussion goes on at the level of scientific community, and Mr. Amirkhanov, or perhaps because of our influence, explained that in the ministry, but there is no official statistics on milk cow industry, so there should be a special line in the statistics. And thirdly, development about 200 cows we sold to our neighbors. So internal market of pedigree breeds is simply not available. A lot of companies are ready to sell these cows, at least to compensate for the expenses. And today, the expenses to be profitable, the price should be as much as 130,000 rubles. Looks like not so much in dollars, but the Western suppliers or foreign suppliers, the pedigree import is released from taxation. This is the first priority. And second, since 2017, there will be again a value-added tax imposed again. So thus they are settling or solving the problem of genetics. Number 4 topic, once I was given the floor to speak, Perhaps I will say something which, as far as milk is concerned, we are fully dependent on imports, and official dependence on 2015, I still don't have numbers on 2016. It's 22.8 percent. But if you take commodity milk, not 30 million tons, which are considered what we really consume and used for manufacturing, if we take only 18 million tons, so we will be actually Russia initially or originally was a milk power. We are dependent on 40% on imports. And what could be proposed here in this respect? Here, the state should clearly state that that's enough. And that question was already raised also. So there is no hand of the business in the dairy industry. The state should manage and control this branch of agriculture. You should manage and govern these things. It's enough to forecast. There should be a plan, a clear-cut plan. And it was already discussed here, region by region. There should be an assignment. If you don't like the word plan, so you could use the term quota, with supported by certain financing from the government, which and that's the end. I'm not passing over to position number 5. This is the chain, how to promote the product among all participants of this change. And we heard a very convincing presentation on a macroeconomic level. And we should share the profit proportionally to the expenses. And for us, economists of 90s and 80s, there should be a norm of profit, and super profit could be withdrawn somehow by the state. So you have announced such a problem like a milk problem, and the state support ceases to exist, and it's a lengthy payback period, and the subsidies were extended to 15 years, but on the other sides they withdraw other measures of support. Who is prepared to finance the farms for 15 years? And since that year, the new team of Kostyaev, they don't have it as a priority, the support of agriculture and milk cow industry. Without the support will not survive. We go further, and the floor is given to Mr. Surosev, the representative of Northwestern Institute of Organization of Agriculture. Actually, this presentation was prepared by the Institute, and please, I would like to use my presentation and go quickly through these pages. I represent Northwestern Institute of Agricultural Economy, and academician Kostyaev is the director of this institution, and he actually advised me to make this presentation. And slide by slide, the Leningrad Oblast, it's a leading region in milk cow industry, and here are the results which I demonstrate here. It's 8,200 per cow, 93 percent of milk is produced in the regions, and 2 farms, more than 12,000, 11 and 10,000. These are fairly huge enterprises, and the region demonstrates impressive results. The bioclimatic potential is zero. Actually, the soil is not very favorable, and if you do not work with this land, so it is not very fertile, and if you don't work with that, in 2 years, you will lose this ground forever. So I would tell you that if you don't work with patches of land for a long time, you may very well lose it. So we have 62 pedigree farms containing 80% of cows. It's a fairly complicated because of a very small number of heifers. And they call Kaliningrad Oblast exclave. And actually they are struggling on the market and try to reduce prices to enter the market. And we talk about the fact that innovative technologies, they change the notion of rent, absolute rent or the first line of rent, and innovation technologies may absolutely change the picture and bring the competitive advantages, and we could help to the process engineers and technological.
Also in the pre-project phase. And certain analysis could be carried out to conclude that, for example, some sector is really running at a loss, but something could be fixed. You know that in the non-black soil area, farming has been always traditionally lossy, but they have learned to make high-quality fodder, and we have developed drugs that are capable of making very good silage, and our researchers know worse than anywhere else. Also with grain forage, it has always been a problem, but the Finnish technology of crushing grain and our technology for the preservation of crushed grain has led to some very good results, and this is not as harmful for the digestion of cows as the traditionally ground grain. And the Microsoft representative has visited us, and we are all digitized and computerized. There's artificial insemination everywhere, but it's also associated with the Celex database, because there's a company with an IT company that has data on all the animals, and it's all regulated at the or managed at the level of entrepreneurial decisions. And we hope that another very important advantage will be implemented because one of our disadvantages is spread and scattering of our facilities, but we can manage it over a large territory from one center without localized management. But so far, these are our theoretical developments, no practical implementations as yet. And this shows how the structure of fodder production in favor of silage has changed. It's a totally different type of silage. It's a very high-quality fodder with very high yields, especially in conditions of rain and with mineral fertilizer. And this is how the technology of milking, the new very productive technology of milking has been implemented. We have processed data. We have separated halls, roto milking halls, and the traditional milking halls. We separated them. This is the milking stations distribution, and what this picture shows is a bit difficult. There's the idea of absolute advantages, but Ricardo introduced the concept of comparative advantage some 200 years ago, and we can say that yes, we lose in terms of prime cost, but as we lose more in terms of grain cost, then the Leningrad region has a relative advantage in milk production. So if we want to increase the well-being of this country, we should never go back to some rigid planning. Well, of course, in the south, you may say that you should provide as much fodder as your sowing capacity allows, but in the north it's different. Here we show that dairy farming has found itself in a state of big depression. Compared to other sectors, we can see that poultry breeders have increased production threefold. Egg production remained the same. But the reason is that the support was aimed at everybody in an equal way. They support poultry farming, pig breeding, and it all is structured in the same way. Only big loans are issued, and what happens is that there seem to be a lot of dairy farming projects, but the share of additional production is or output is too low. And then here we have tried to analyze the reasons for increased or stalling milk output. And here, this is a selection of data since 1990 to look whether there have been any farms which increased output, and we found them to be medium-sized farms, but those in excess of the natural standard for concentration in the Leningrad region displayed poorer results. So we are in support of medium-sized farms. They are those that will win in the competition for productivity. So those who will enable medium-sized farms to develop will also be the winner. Of course, there need to be some mega complexes, but there should be high yield commodity enterprises as well. That is all. Thank you. Thank you very much for your very interesting presentation. We have very little time and many speakers, but all of the speakers have agreed that all the presentations and statements will be uploaded to our academies and our department's website. So if you are interested in this subject, you can always access it and read what you have not heard. And now let's go over to the concluding part of our workshop. We're very happy that we have such a strong team here. We have had the chairman of the Agro-industrial Complex Committee. We are having here the flower of our agro-industrial science. We have representatives from the business community and the educational academic community, and we're very thankful to you for coming here to our center. We hope to cooperate with you for the benefit of the agro-industrial complex of Russia. The main thing is that this conference has given a strong impetus, both a physical and an intellectual one, for our active joint work. So we would like also to distribute a questionnaire. We will not do this here, but we will distribute it electronically. So please complete them and send them back. And this is also going to be useful feedback for us. So many, many thanks. As a woman, I am especially thankful to the men and the women here. We thank all those who supported us here.